We teach people to live by a guiding question. We say it's just simple to ask, what does love require of me in this situation?
Thanks for joining us here on the Faith Ignited channel. I'm Michael Bridges, Executive Pastor at Faith Ignited. I'm with Aaron Shivington.
Good morning.
Morning, Aaron, our pastor at Faith Ignited. And Aaron, as you know, we love answering questions.
Yeah.
And we got one this past week, and it said, from one of our people that had been in our service a couple of weeks ago. It said, I love the sermon you and Michael did, and it said especially the Michael part.
Yes, I highlighted your name. Thank you, Marcia.
I love the sermon you and Michael did. It happened to be on the topic of abortion. I've never heard the biblical perspective explained so clearly. Thank you. How do I respond to someone who says, my body, my choice? How do I respond to that?
Great question.
Yeah.
So let me start by just acknowledging once again, in case someone wasn't part of the service, this is emotionally a complicated subject. Morally, it is very simple. And before somebody starts sending in hate mail, let me encourage you to go back and watch the actual video of the service, because I thought we handled it very well, and we did it with kind, caring, compassion, acknowledging that there are members of our community who at one point in time felt like they had to make this choice, and reminding them that there is grace and healing and forgiveness. And we even had a lady in our service, and I didn't know this, but this was really cool. We had a lady in our service whose son was celebrating his 7th birthday, so 7 years old, on that Sunday, and she said, a friend of mine talked me out of an abortion, and she said, I can't say enough about how my life would be different, or how the loss I would have without my son being here.
Without her son,
Yeah.
And Aaron, let me just point out too, we often think of people who have been affected by abortion, we think of just the mother.
Right.
Which is absolutely true, first and foremost, but there are so many other people, so many other family members, and adults of teenagers and adolescents. You've got the male figure that's a part of that. You've got whole families, and so many people carry so much pain and loss from that. And so I really do appreciate, you probably spent half of the time in that message just speaking grace to those people and letting them know they're welcome here, we love you, we're here to help you, to walk down this path with you.
Right. And of course we cover this subject because we love critical thinking. We love saying, what does the Bible say? And as difficult as it is, we're not afraid to cover difficult subjects or sensitive subjects. So here we are talking about abortion, and let me just give one more note before we actually answer the question. That is, if right now you're watching this video and you're contemplating an abortion, you're thinking about it, feel free to reach out to us as a church. We're not going to hate you. We're not going to throw rocks. In fact, what we want to do is come along beside you and support you, pray for you, and love you through the situation.
Absolutely.
So,
well put.
All right, so the question is, someone objects, and we hear it all the time, my body, my choice. My body, my choice. My body, my choice. Which is an absolute ironic and just, I can't even say the right word to go, really, that's your objection. There's not logic behind it. It's just a fun statement to make. And so we start by saying, okay, the minute the egg and sperm unite at conception, science now tells us what we didn't know 20, 30 years ago, which is that DNA for that new human being is completely different and separate from its mother's.
Yes.
In fact, part of what happens in the woman's body is that there is, if you will, a protective shield placed around that child so the mother's body doesn't harm that child, because the mother's body recognizes it as a foreign object, because it's not the same as the mother's body. And so immediately at conception, the sperm and the egg mix, there's new DNA, there's not new cells, there's a new human being, and what we have is something that's separate from its mother. And so the argument of it's my body, my choice, I don't always disagree that in the sense that you have your body, you get to choose with it what you want to do, although, again, we step in as a community in moments of self-harm. But here we're not talking about just your body. We're talking about your body, which houses
Someone else's body.
somebody else's body. And we have all kinds of rules in our society that say you can't harm someone else. And so when someone says, hey, stay out of my uterus, my body, my choice, and all the other phrases, I just want to go, okay, but we're not talking about just you. Science reveals that from the moment of conception, we're now talking about two people, two distinct people. And so a friend of mine from Stand of Reason often uses the argument, and he goes, it's a little, he goes, you can't use it with kids, but he goes, for instance, say to the woman, if the boy inside you, it's a boy, has a penis, do you as a mother have a penis? The answer is, well, no, I don't. And he goes, well, therefore it's not the same as yours, right? It's a whole different human being. So the argument really doesn't have any logic. It's just kind of a fun catchphrase for someone who, again, has lost the logical argument, or maybe hasn't really engaged in the logical argument, but it's just going along with a catchphrase. At the core of the whole debate is the question, is this a human being or not? If it's a human being, then we have a responsibility to care for it, to protect him or her, and to love him or her. If the person inside you is not a human being, which science now tells us clearly it is, then it doesn't matter. Because I don't care if you go destroy a rock. I don't care if you go break up your driveway, right?
A clump of cells inside your body that is some kind of a tumor is that's a part of your body. That's not a separate life.
Right.
And so yeah, you can have the tumor removed. You can do that. This is different. This is another life.
Right. Right. So that's really how I would respond. And again, let me just encourage the person who's asking, how do I respond? First, be very pastoral. Again, care for the person. Ask them where the question's coming from. Maybe they've got a whole story of hurt or background that they want to share that, again, the question isn't really relevant, because you need to care for them first and offer them forgiveness and grace or healing, or remind them that there are other options. Maybe they're right now thinking about, I'm considering an abortion. And again, they're convinced that they can't afford this child, they can't care for this child. And so answering the question may not really be what needs to be done from the standpoint of Jesus Christ. Maybe you need to help them remember there are other options. There's adoption, there's people who will help care for you, there's church families who will come around and rally behind you, caring for this life, and celebrate the heroic work of, this is how I got pregnant, okay, but now I'm going to make right choices and choose to bring about life, because that's what God wants. God views all life as sacred. So I would just say to the person who's asking the question, again, be careful on how you approach, be cautious, be in prayer, and remember, we need to ask the one guiding question, what does love require of me in this situation?
Yeah, Aaron, I appreciate that, and I would just add one small thing onto that. If you're speaking with someone, and they do say that, and they themselves are thinking about an abortion, I think one of my greatest concerns, first and foremost for the child itself, but secondly for the individual,
Right.
because once that happens, the rest of their life, virtually every individual that has been touched or had an abortion, been touched by it, there's regret, there's pain, there's hurt, and you can't go back and undo that.
Right.
And so the mentioning to be pastoral, which I love, you don't have to be a pastor, just anybody.
Right.
Is not only to express your care for the child, but to express your care for the person.
Right.
Because if that happens, you can't turn back the clock, and there is so much pain to deal with. Like you just said about the person in church that said 7 years ago, this child would not be here 7 years ago, and the grace that God gave her to not have to deal with that, not have to deal with that pain. And so caring for the individual themselves, seeking to protect them, demonstrates our love for them, and because we legitimately know that it's probably going to happen, and we care about them.
Right. And again, here's where we step in and remind that person they're not alone. And my experience, limited it is, but my experience with women who are struggling with this decision is often they feel so alone that this is the only option they have.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to help me? Who's going to stand with me? Who's going to care for me? And even going to the abortion clinic, you often see these young ladies struggling to find someone to go with them and have this medical procedure. Why? Because not only is there shame, but again, they're alone. They feel alone, and so they don't know who to ask for help or care. And so this is where we can step in as a church and be the body of Christ and say, you're not alone. You don't have to make this decision. It's not the only option. I want to love you, and I want to present you with other options for preserving life and again, helping yourself.
Yeah, and in some of those options, there are many options, some of which include adoption. And
Right.
there's a list of families that would love to adopt a child
Right.
that are out there. That's just one of many options. And other services and agencies that churches and like Down to Life Enrichment Center provide to help mothers who are facing obstacles of affording care and the different things you need for children. They help provide that. So there are a lot of ministries out there, and we can connect you to them. And oftentimes as a church, we can help with that through Faith Ignited as well.
Right. And so let's close with reminding someone this. A healthy church is able to hear that you're wrestling with this, right? You're not going to walk in and say, I'm thinking about an abortion. An unhealthy church might immediately ostracize you, might immediately criticize you. A healthy church is going to come around you and say, we love you. How do we care for you? Are you aware there are other options? How do we help you make a godly decision here? But we're going to love you regardless, and we are okay with having the conversation. And tell us why you're thinking about that. Tell us what's going on, and not criticizing the person for their thought pattern or their history. Again, someone doesn't arrive there on accident. They arrive there because there's a story. And so how do we hear the story, and how do we care for the person and move them closer to Jesus?
And Faith Ignited will be a place with our arms open to welcome anyone who has had an abortion, who's been affected by abortion. Please come and let us love you.
Yeah.
So
So right now I would say to you again, if you're thinking about this or wrestling with this, you can reach out to us through our Facebook. You can reach out to us through any of our social media accounts or directly online. Call us, send us an email, and we want to come beside you and help you make godly decisions, but remind you that you're not alone and that there are options for you and that you are loved regardless.
And we're on YouTube and Facebook. Also, go to our website, www.faithignited.church. You'll find all the contact information there. We have services every Sunday in Fairborn and Xenia, and we would love to see you there. Thanks very much. Thanks, Aaron.